Have you ever noticed how some people seem to walk through the world with an almost irritating calmness? They don't over-explain themselves. They don't apologize for being who they are. And, most surprisingly, they don't seem to care what others think. Yet they are respected, admired, even desired. Meanwhile, most people are stuck. They measure their words, hesitate before posting a photo, replay conversations in their heads as if it were possible to edit the past. The fear of judgment paralyzes them. The desire to be accepted shapes behaviors, stifles opinions, distorts their identity, and all of this is due to an illusion. The idea that if we please enough people, we will be loved, validated, included. But the truth is the opposite. The more you try to fit in, the more you lose the spark that makes others truly interested in you. There is a huge difference between living, trying to please, and living authentically. And the path to this freedom is not complicated. It doesn't require shouting, rebellion, or coldness. In fact, it is much simpler than it seems. Being the guy who doesn't care isn't about putting others down. It's about not giving up on yourself in order to be accepted. It's about stopping playing a game that no one really wins and starting to live with ease, focus, and courage. This mindset shift can transform not only the way you're seen, but most importantly, the way you feel. And it starts with one simple step: understanding why we care so much about things we shouldn't. From an early age, we are trained to seek approval, first from our parents, then from our teachers, later from our peers, our bosses, our partners. At each stage, we learn that being accepted means fitting in, and that standing out can be dangerous. This silent conditioning shapes our decisions, what we wear, what we say, what we hide, and little by little, the desire to be accepted begins to distance us from our essence. This tendency is not just cultural, it is biological. According to social neuroscience, the human brain responds to ostracism with the same pain it would feel when faced with physical aggression. This explains why criticism or rejection hurts so much, even when it is irrelevant. The desire to belong is not weak, it is instinctive. But this need, when unregulated, becomes a prison. Psychologist Brené Brown, a world reference in vulnerability and authenticity, shows that trying to please everyone all the time makes us anxious, insecure, and emotionally exhausted. And the most ironic thing, even so, we continue to be judged. Because pleasing others doesn't eliminate judgment, it just postpones it. The uncomfortable truth is that everyone is judged all the time, including those who try to hide, including those who do everything to be accepted, or maybe especially those. After all, when someone lives for the validation of others, they convey fragility, and fragility, unfortunately, invites disrespect. On the other hand, when someone is clear about who they are and what they believe without trying to convince anyone, something changes. A different kind of respect emerges, a respect that doesn't need to be asked for. It just happens. It's not about ignoring others. It's about stopping conforming out of fear of their opinion. Emotionally mature people understand that not everything deserves a response, that not every look has weight, that not every criticism is worthy of attention. And this attitude, contrary to what many people think, doesn't require superhuman effort. It comes from the conscious decision to stop seeking approval and start seeking truth. You're in a conversation, and you hear something you disagree with. But instead of saying what you think, you smile, nod, and change the subject. Not because you agree, but because you don't want to seem problematic. Or maybe you have an idea, a strong opinion, a style of your own. But before you post, before you speak, before you act, you run everything through a mental filter. What will people think of me? And if it seems too risky, you shut up. Again. How many times have you wanted to say no but said yes just to avoid the awkwardness? How many times have you given in, swallowed, postponed, pretended? Not because you lacked courage, but because you were too concerned about how others would think of you. These small concessions seem harmless, but when added together, they become a lifestyle, one in which you live more in the realm of expected than in the realm of authenticity. And this comes at a cost. You start to feel invisible, suffocated, disconnected from yourself. This constant self-censorship consumes energy. The constant doubt, will people like me if I do this, undermines your spontaneity, your creativity, your presence. You start to operate in defensive mode. You're constantly adjusting, moderating, and pruning yourself until you can't even remember who you really are, without the filters. And this doesn't just happen with big decisions. It's in the way you dress, the tone of your voice, the way you walk, even the words you choose. With each choice you make out of fear of judgment, you reinforce the idea that you need the approval of others to exist. But what if you didn't? What if you discovered that freedom begins precisely when you realize that you don't owe anyone anything but respect, including yourself? That's where the turning point comes in. Because when you act from who you really are, without asking for permission, the game changes. And curiously, those who previously ignored you start to pay attention. It's not about becoming a cold, indifferent, or selfish person. Change begins when you learn to respect your own truth more than the opinions of others. This doesn't require an external revolution, but an internal reorganization, and it starts with small actions. The first is the conscious no. Saying no is not aggressive, it's a form of protection. Every time you say yes to something you don't want, you're saying no to yourself. Start by testing it out in simple situations. An invitation that doesn't make sense, an extra task that isn't your responsibility, a conversation you don't want to have. By saying no, you affirm that your will also matters, and over time this becomes a habit. The second practice is intentional discomfort. Every time you avoid taking a stand to avoid being judged, you reinforce the idea that you can't handle judgment. So challenge this belief. Start with small gestures. Share an unpopular opinion politely. Post something that represents you, even if it generates mixed reactions. Make a different choice from the group. Gradually exposing yourself to discomfort teaches your brain that you are stronger than your fear of disapproval. Cutting down on social media can also help. When you constantly compare the behind-the-scenes footage of your life to the edited highlights of others, your self-esteem will erode. Take some time away from screens. Notice how you feel when you're not trying to show off all the time. You'll be surprised at the relief. Another powerful tool is direct self-talk. Whenever you feel the fear of being judged, ask yourself, does what I think about myself matter more than what others think? And answer honestly. This simple question reconnects you with your core. It's also worth noting who's around you. Surrounding yourself with people who respect your authenticity is a shortcut to emotional strength. You can't always change your external environment, but you can always choose who you give access to your mind. And finally, remember, it's not about never caring about anything again, but rather, you need to choose very carefully what and who you care about. Because your energy is limited, and wasting it on fear of being judged is wasting the chance to be free. If these ideas are making sense to you so far, it's worth subscribing to the channel. Here, the focus is exactly that, to help you overcome self-censorship and live with more clarity, courage, and lightness. It's that simple. Being the guy who doesn't care doesn't mean isolating yourself, turning into a stone, or acting superior. It simply means stopping trading your essence in exchange for acceptance. It's an act of quiet courage, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. And the paradox is clear: the less you try to please, the more respect you inspire. Because people who are at peace with who they are exude something rare: real confidence. effortless, without facades. The freedom you seek may not lie in changing who you are, but in stopping hiding. And the strength you admire in others may already exist within you, it's just dormant under the fear of judgment. Starting today, start with a gesture, a no that you've been swallowing, a choice made by you, not others. And watch. Your life begins to change the moment you stop. Asking for permission to be yourself,